Appreciate you all joining us. This is Craig Klein, and want to first of all introduce you to our host today. I'm joined by Michael Halper, CEO of Launchpad Solutions. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Craig. Hello, everybody.
Michael will be really presenting the bulk of the material today. And also, we were to be joined by Forrest Cassidy of LeadFerret.com, but it looks like we're running into some technical difficulty, so he may be joining us any minute now. And we'll be talking about the LeadFerret system here as we go forward. Want to be sure and let you guys know that today's webinar is a part of a ongoing series that we've created to kick off the year, and you can see the schedule there on your screen. Last week we had our Magic 5 of content-based email marketing that drives sales. That was a great webinar. Michael helped out with that, as did Forrest, and it's recorded and available on our site if you'd like to take a look at that. And obviously today is building a successful marketing and sales process by identifying your customer's pain. Next week, we'll be doing how to qualify sales leads and focus on sales growth that's profitable. So be sure and register for that. And then you can see also on the 6th, we'll be covering managing your sales process and your sales pipeline. And then on the 13th, creating a 360-degree view of the customer relationship to grow your business. So be sure and register for all of those webinars, and then I'm going to turn it over to Michael now to kind of touch on some notes from last week's webinar and take us into the pain.
Thanks, Craig. So we want to start out by doing a quick recap of last week. We know that there are some people that are here that might not have attended. And for those that did attend, we just want to definitely do a quick refresher and then before we dive into the new material. But last week we really talked about a 5-5-5 content marketing strategy to help you to generate leads. That really starts with identifying 5 pain points on the front end that you help to resolve, and then building content pieces for each of those and sending those out in 5 separate emails. And then hopefully you're using some sort of system to send those out to where you can track opens and clicks, and then you follow up those emails with some calls to your prospects where you ask 5 qualifying questions and hopefully try to either qualify prospects and generate leads, and if you don't, then you progress to set up another campaign for or you send out additional emails, and the third round of emails might be more FAQ emails that are specific and content pieces that are specific to you and your business, and maybe questions that are frequently asked you. That's what we talked about last week. That's all I'm going to really say on that, although we'll kind of circle back to this concept at the end of this module. But if you want more information on that overall concept, be sure to watch the training from last week. What we're going to do, though, here today is we're going to drill down into the first section of this strategy, which is the pain, and we are going to, if I can advance, there we go. We're going to drill into talk specifically about pain today. This module is more geared around pain in a larger aspect from just a pure sales standpoint. So we're going to take a step back a little bit from the topic of just pain emails and pain content pieces, and we're going to talk about really what pain is, why pain is important to focus on. We will outline 3 levels of pain. We'll talk about symptoms. We'll talk about why pain is hard to find, give you some tactics to uncover pain, talk about pain impact. By attending this webinar and adopting any of this information, you should be able to better establish cold calls by incorporating the topic of pain in your messaging and what you talk about. You should be able to have better conversations with prospects. Ultimately, that will lead to generating more leads when you have better interactions. And when you are able to focus more on pain, either identifying pain or identifying when pain doesn't exist, then you'll be able to better qualify your prospects. So that's what we're going to talk about here today, and let's just got a lot of information to cover, so let's just get right started. First, starting out, what is pain? This is pain kind of in a sales context, so pain can mean a lot of different things. But pain basically means when something is not working well for your prospects, and that could be creating some sort of negative impact on your prospect side, or something. Oh, I'm so sorry. My phone is ringing that through my PC, and I've disabled everything except my phone. Apologize for that. Just to back up a minute, pain is basically something that is not working well for your prospects, and we'll drill into that in more detail. But it doesn't just stop there. It could also be something that could be working better, meaning things might be working just fine, but there could be a gap there in terms of the desired level of performance. And at the most basic level, pain, the real question of whether or not there's pain is, are things great, are they good, okay, or could they be better? And if things are good or great, then there might not be any pain. And if things are okay or could be better, there is likely some underlying pain there on your prospect side in the particular area that you're talking about. So why is this topic so important, and why is it that this could really help you to generate more leads? Well, first of all, at the most basic level, if there's no pain, there's no reason to change. You could have, let's say you sell a piece of software, and your software is very innovative, it has great features, it's very cool, it demos really nicely, and you could show it to a prospect, and you know what, they could be really excited about it. But if they're currently using something today that you would replace, and it's working okay, even knowing they're excited about it, because things are okay and there's no pain, they might not be able to justify spending money to switch over to what you have. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but those are the sales deals that you find that stall out at the end and that you're really having to work hard to close because there's no pain. Another reason, kind of picking up where that leaves off, is that if you're trying to generate leads and schedule meetings, which is kind of the main topic of these webinars, if there's no pain, there's no real reason to meet. Think about it for a minute, that the only time you go to the doctor primarily is when something's wrong. You know, if your doctor's office called you and said, hey, do you want to come on in, and if everything's great, you're going to say, no thanks, I don't need to, and you know, you have plenty of other things to work on. It's the same thing for your prospects. If you aren't calling them and reaching out to them for a pain that you can resolve, then they're not going to be able to justify, or they'll be less able to justify spending time to meet with you. Getting a prospect's attention. So this is something we want to do with our lead generation activities, whether they're calls or emails, and by being able to center our messaging around pain that the prospect might have, you're going to be able better to get their attention. You'll be able to better to build connections with your prospect. When you shift from talking about your products and your features that you have to offer, and you focus more towards talking about the prospect's pain, you're going to shift more from an all about me position to an all about you position when you being your prospect. And that can help to build rapport and build a connection with the prospect. This will also help you to extract valuable information from the prospect, meaning if you can identify what's not working and where the pains are, you'll have very valuable information that you can use throughout the sales cycle that can help with you to build your business case, build your proposal, build your ROI calculations, close deals, and on. And of course, this will help you to qualify prospects. Like I said before, if you don't find any pain, then it's not a qualified prospect, so you can probably move on to other prospects. So as you can see there, this concept is really key to being effective.
Michael, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I just wanted to introduce Forrest. He was able to join us. Welcome, Forrest. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Craig. Sorry, I logged in under the wrong link initially, so I
No
could
worries.
hear you guys, but I couldn't talk. So
No worries.
glad to be here, and just liking what Michael's talking about, and thanks everybody for attending.
Sure, and just to remind everybody, Forrest is the CEO of LeadFerret.com, and here in a little bit we're going to touch on a little more about LeadFerret.com. Sorry about that, Michael. Go ahead.
To help you to get a better understanding or to help you to get your hands around what pain is and what it might look like, here are 3 levels of pain. The first level is sort of the foundational level. You could think of it as the lowest level where pain maybe starts to grow. Okay, and we call this the technical pain. And don't get confused with IT. I mean, it has nothing to do with technology. It's just the most sort of the lowest level of where the pain begins to foster. And this is in the area of processes or systems or people, such as employees. It could be technology, and a lot of times it is technology-based, but it doesn't have to be. For example, let's talk about employees and processes. If it takes you 2 months to get an employee on board and up and running, that could be a fairly long time in your business, and that causes a tremendous amount of pain. And that's technical pain. It's process-driven. It's dealing with your employees. But here are some examples. Slow, broken, manual processes. Those are all either causes or results of technical pain. Poor system performance, or maybe poor employee performance, lack of reliability. So those are areas where technical pain exists, and when that begins to occur, that will work its way up and create business pain. And this is where challenges and negative impacts start to occur in areas like revenue, costs, customers, delivery of services. And some examples here could be, low revenue, decreased market share, close rate, high cost of goods sold, high labor costs. There's a number of different areas of costs: high inventory costs, materials costs, poor delivery of services. So if we have a website that's going down frequently, that could be that's a technical pain. Our server might be unreliable, and that causes us business pain because that's providing poor delivery of our services. Our current customers aren't able to access their information. Our prospects can't process their orders, so that's a poor delivery of services, and that causes us a negative impact in the area of revenue and so on. So it doesn't stop there, unfortunately. When you feel business pain, that will continue to work its way up and typically impact the prospects that you sell to in the area of personal pain. So I kind of threw out an IT example there. Let's say that your prospects are IT directors or maybe VPs of IT. And I mentioned servers are going down. Well, that's the technical pain that causes the business pain of business services not able to be delivered. Well, what does this mean to that director of IT? Well, quite honestly, if that's happening on their watch, that could impact their bonuses, their compensation, their ability to be promoted. If you're a VP of IT and you're having all these problems, that might prevent you from being promoted to become CIO. So everything works its way up to impact your prospects at a personal level, and some of the areas are income, career, work environment. A common area of pain is that prospects are working too much. The work-life balance. They're spending too much time working, not enough time home with their family, and a lot of the products that you all sell can often help with that. So those are 3 levels of pain. If you can kind of keep those separate and understand how your products help in those different areas, that can help you to get your hands around pain. And just like the way that a doctor, when you do go to the doctor's office and they're trying to figure out if something's wrong, they'll look for certain symptoms. How's your appetite? How are you able to sleep? They'll ask you some certain questions and they're looking for certain symptoms. What we've done here is we've outlined 6 common pain symptoms that could occur, and we're going to go through each of these one at a time, and we will use an example to kind of to show you the different dynamics involved with each symptom. And so we'll go through these one at a time. And what I would say to you is that if you wanted to make a list of these and kind of take this list, and when you're looking at talking to prospects, kind of go through the list, that would probably work. Your list might be different, but the main point of this exercise is to identify that, for you to realize that just because your prospects say that things are good or okay doesn't mean that they are, and we'll demonstrate that here.
Hey, Michael, real quick. Michael, let me just interject real quick so everybody knows. After the webinar, tomorrow, you'll all get an email with a link to a recording of the webinar and also the slides. So you can go back and reference all of this information via the slides and the recording. So that'll be available to everybody sometime tomorrow via email. And also, if you have questions, as Michael's going through the material here today, type them in. I'm watching the questions, and I'll interject with questions at appropriate times here. We'll try to make sure your questions get addressed there. That you'll see questions in the GoToWebinar control panel there.
And on that note, I want to reconnect why we're talking about this to what we talked about last week in the lead generation strategy. The lead generation strategy, remember, we have 5 emails that focus on your prospect's pain. So we're really just trying to help you to understand what pain is, to help you to identify what the pain you resolve is, so that you can build out that content. And the first pain symptom that we're going to talk about is that things aren't working well. And we're going to use a very common everyday example here just to kind of break these down. And the example is that is owning and operating a vehicle. Most everybody can either relate to this in some way, or they currently own a vehicle. And to include the business level components here, we're going to say that we use our vehicle for work purposes, and we use it to complete deliveries, just so that we can kind of get that revenue factor in there. But the first symptom is that things aren't working well, okay? And with this symptom, basically the vehicle breaks down about 3 or 4 times a year. So that's pretty apparent to us, right? About 3 or 4 times a year, we're stuck on the side of a road. So we physically, know that this pain occurs, and the root cause of this pain is that the systems and processes are old and faulty in the vehicle. This causes us technical pain in the area that we're not able to get to our destination. So that's basically the pain that we're feeling. We need to go to this location. Our car breaks down. We cannot get there. The technical pain is that we cannot get to where we want to go, and our systems are breaking down. The business pain that this causes is that we're not able to complete our deliveries at that particular moment. And this impacts us from a revenue standpoint, because the more deliveries we complete, the more money we make for our business, or whether it's our business or we work for an employer. So the business pain is our revenues negatively hit here by our systems not working well. And the personal pain is that when we're stuck on the side of a road, we have to work late in order to, for whatever reason, on those particular days, and this takes away time from our family. Okay, so we just identified a symptom, things aren't working well, and then we identified how this is impacting us at a technical, business, and personal level. And by the way, I know this is a fairly academic exercise. By the way, you don't have to memorize this. It's to help you to get your hands around the 3 different levels and some different ways that a prospect could be impacted. Just to go back to this slide, an example of how this could happen in the business world is, let's go back to the server crashing, right? The server crashes, and that's an example. If the server crashes once a week and that impacts your website, that is an example of things not working well. So that's a clear pain symptom of things not working well. But here's an important thing to get your hands around. It doesn't just mean that things might not be working well. As I mentioned earlier, there could also be a symptom of things could be working better. So let's go back to the car example. Let's say that our our vehicle starts like a charm every day, never breaks down. It's very extremely reliable. But our vehicle can only travel, let's say, 45 miles an hour top speed, right? So this, when we're out on the open road, we're driving very slowly, okay? And so we're not able to travel as fast and as far as we would, as fast as we would like. So how is this impacting us? Well, at a technical level, it takes us a little longer to get to each destination. We always get there and the car never breaks down, but it takes us a little longer. Well, from a business standpoint, we cannot complete as many deliveries per day because it's a little bit more time. That impacts us from a revenue standpoint. At a personal level, our compensation is less. Maybe we were bonused on the number of deliveries per day, per week, whatever, or maybe we get tips. We're negatively impacted by this pain. So the important thing to realize here is that things are working. The performance, we have reliability, but the overall performance is at a negative level. An example of this in the business environment, let's say you're a manufacturer and your manufacturing line works perfectly, never goes down, but it only spits out 100 units per hour. But if you upgraded the systems, you could spit out 250 units per hour. Well, things are working okay, but they could be working better. And what does that difference mean to you from a technical level, business level? What's the additional revenue that you could make if you did not have that pain of things could be working better? The next one is processes are time consuming. Going back to the vehicle. Let's say we're driving a very old vehicle and it's manual transmission, all the controls and features are manual. Well, what does this mean? This one's a bit of a stretch, but operating the vehicle is very manual, which means we're very distracted, and it takes us a little longer to operate the vehicle because of all the different things that we have to do, and that creates additional time. Maybe it's the vehicle's labor intensive. Maybe we have to have maybe it's a garbage truck, and you have to have 2 people driving the vehicle, and that presents additional labor costs. For the business. So there's an example of processes are time-consuming and manual, and because of that, things are slower to get through and to get done, and maybe more labor-intensive. This impacts us from a revenue and cost perspective. It could impact us from a compensation perspective. Relaying this to the business world, you may sell products or services that help to improve the level of automation for your prospects. And by improving automation, you make things less time-consuming. So the pain that you resolve is that processes are extremely time-consuming. Errors are being made. To use the vehicle example, let's say that our speedometer tells us the wrong speed. Okay? Well, if we look at our speedometer and we see the wrong speed, then we might not be able to operate the vehicle correctly, meaning we might drive too fast and get a speeding ticket and get in an accident. We might drive too slow, get in an accident as well. So we're getting incorrect information and errors are being made. The technical pain here is that we're not able to correctly operate the vehicle. The business pain is that we could end up with traffic violations or accidents. The personal pain is that we could actually get hurt in an accident and physical injury. So how does this relate to the business world? Well, your prospects may rely on information, and they do rely on information, but in the particular area that you provide products and services, there may be information there that they rely on, and there may be errors being made in those processes or in the information, and this impacts their ability to manage their business and make decisions. And if they're not able to make decisions, the correct decisions, they might be fined. Think of a financial institution who needs to stay in compliance and very strict accounting compliance, and if they have incorrect information and make the wrong decisions, even knowing their integrity is all in the right place, they might get fined by the SEC, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was because they had wrong information. So you might be able to resolve a problem for your clients where errors are being made. Probably it depends on what you sell, but that's an example of a pain symptom. Now we're going to get into a couple that just about all prospects experience, and that is high costs. Going back to the example, let's say our vehicle is not fuel efficient. Okay. Well, the root cause for this is either we're driving a vehicle that just is flat out not efficient, or there might be a fuel leak. This causes us technical pain in the area that we have to stop more frequently to fill our vehicle. Well, that decreases our productivity. Every time we have to stop, we're taken away from completing our deliveries and operating our vehicle. The business pain that this causes is we're not able to it hits us from a cost standpoint. We're having to spend more on fuel, maybe a profitability and productivity standpoint. And a personal level, this could impact our bonuses and our compensation because we're not driving a fuel economic business vehicle. So how does this relate to the business world? Well, just about all of your clients, your prospects could actually be dealing with this exact example. There was over the summer or in recent years, fuel costs have been really high, and that hits your prospects at a bottom in their bottom line. But all prospects are really struggling with the pain of high costs. Even if costs aren't abnormally high in a particular area, they all at least have a desire to decrease costs, and it's sort of a soft pain at that level. And the last one is low revenue. So this is kind of similar in that probably every prospect that you deal with wants more revenue, but if in relation to the car example, any of the symptoms that we just described, any of the problems could be impacting us from not being able to optimize the use of the vehicle, and that impacts our ability to complete deliveries, impacts us in the ability to generate and optimize the most revenue that we can get out of each vehicle that our operations department uses, and this could impact us at the end of the year from a profit sharing standpoint. You could probably think of a number of reasons that your clients do not have the revenue that they want. I'll give you an example for my business. We help businesses to generate more leads, right? So a common pain that our clients have is that revenue is maybe down year over year, or they're missing revenue growth projections. Well, that's a pain. And so that's something that I need to be aware of. And when I meet with prospects, and if for some reason they've grown 100% year over year, while I can still probably have a decent conversation with them, that prospect doesn't have the real pain that I'm looking for and that I can resolve, so might not be a qualified prospect. Craig, any questions on the chat?
Well, there's, excuse me, there was a lot of people that were asking a lot of questions about sort of how, what they're really asking, I think, is how strict is this approach? And I think you're addressing that now. It's more of a, knowing the destination and what you're after as opposed to and continuing to question until you get there, right?
Right. I definitely want to. I try to say this, and I'll reemphasize it. This is not. This is somewhat of an academic exercise that we're going through here, and I wouldn't want you to take these 6 symptoms and the 3 levels and build out like a matrix and sit down with your clients and say, are you happy with revenue? Do you have any manual processes? What I would hope you would take away from this is to realize that if I were to ask somebody, if you just ask simple questions like how's it going, you're probably not going to touch the area of pain. You need to dig a little deeper, and if someone just says things are fine or things are great, there could be some underlying pain there. One thing I want to point out is, and I'll talk about this on this next slide, this concept of latent pain. The prospects that you deal with are very likely to not be aware of the pain that they have. And so this is kind of a good segue to this next slide, which is pain is fairly tough to get into the conversations or to get identified when you're talking with prospects, and there's a couple reasons why. One is, if you're in a meeting, and this state of denial means that your prospects might either consciously deny that they have pain, meaning you say, how's everything going, and they say good when they know it's not. So they consciously say, you know, we're fine when they're really not, or they might not be aware of the fact that they have pain, so they're unconsciously denying. A good example of this state of denial, and this happens a lot when you're doing prospecting and calling. You know, if you have someone on the phone, they might just want to get off the phone with you and get back to what they were doing. So they're just going to deny when you try to talk to them about pain. A good example of this is a football player who maybe gets hit, and the coach says, how do you feel? And the football player says, I feel fine, put me back in, coach. Even knowing the football player hurts, and he just wants to get back in the game. And so that's what prospects are often when you reach them on a cold call specifically. And so they'll deny that, you know, even if you ask fairly good questions. So the other reason why pain can be tough to find is that there's this concept of latent pain, which means the pain is there, but they're not aware that it exists. So what you need to do is bring the pain to the forefront of the prospect's mind by asking good questions. And why I was about to jump over to this point a minute ago was we went through 6 scenarios, and we were talking about operating and owning a vehicle. And we talked about 6 different problems and areas and real pain symptoms. Only one of those, all of those could be occurring, and the prospect could be completely aware of that they occur, except for one. Except for the pain where the vehicle physically breaks down and you're on the side of the road, that you know that there's a problem. But all of the others, the person could be completely unaware of. We talked, you know, we talked about that there could be a vehicle that could move faster. Maybe that your prospect thinks that they're moving as fast as they could be. Your prospect is currently using manual processes that are time-consuming, but they don't know that automation is available. Your prospect has errors being made, but you know what? Sometimes you don't know errors are being made, and you're just using faulty information. So those are some examples that pain exists, but your prospects aren't aware of it. So what can we do to bring that pain to the forefront of your prospect's mind? And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you 4 tactics to use. These are all really easy to implement, and they are very possible to produce immediate results. If you deploy them across a number of calls, you should see an immediate improvement in your results. So we're going to go through each of these one at a time. The first one is rating questions. So you could say, you know, how are things going with your current service provider? And you know, the prospect might say good, right? They might say, oh, pretty good. You know, well, that doesn't. First of all, that answer, pretty good, probably tells you that there's no pain, right? If things are pretty good, there's no pain. But if you change that question to a rating question, which would be to say, you know, how happy are you with the level of your the level of service from your current provider on a scale from 1 to 10? And then if, let's say the prospect says 7.5, which 7.5 would probably be equal to a pretty good, right? Well, 7.5 tells you that it's not perfect, right? So there's some sort of gap there, and this gives you the opportunity to go, oh, well, it sounds like you're doing all right. If you know, I tell you what, if I could ask you real quick, you say 7.5, just out of curiosity, you know, is there a reason why you give that rating in place of a 10? You know, what could it take to get you to increase that? And that can help you to identify the gap. And usually in the gap, there can often be some sort of pain. They might say, oh, well, you know, their pricing is, you know, a little high, or, you know, their support isn't very good. So rating questions, real simple to do. Just you can modify your questions. Here is one of the more powerful ones, and this is this is what we probably use the most in my business when we do prospecting calls. What we do is we give pain examples and to try to kind of poke the coals on the prospect side and get them to identify that they might have something going on. And so here's an example. Well, let's see. Here's an example of giving a pain example. So we work, you know, Mrs. Prospect, we work a lot with businesses that say that it's time-consuming and difficult to run a global report. Is that something you can relate to? So in place of just saying, well, how's everything going? Are you able to get the reports that you need? You know, do you have any reporting items or whatever? You can be very specific. You know, we're giving an example of a common pain, and so then we're checking in. Is this something you can relate to? What we often do when we do calling is we'll find three. So we'll say, you know, when we talk with prospects, you know, they often express challenges with running global reports, reconciling, you know, the different invoices, and you know, spending a lot of time on the weekends, you know, balancing the books. You know, are any of those, you know, challenges that you can relate to? And then, you know, you check in with the prospect, and a lot of times the prospect will say, no, I'm fine with all of those. And if so, you could maybe throw some more pain at them, or you could maybe say, oh, you know, maybe this isn't a prospect that is a good fit. So that's an example of giving pain examples.
Hey, Michael.
Yep.
Real quick. Just first of all, I wanted to point out to everybody that was on the webinar last week, this last slide and the next couple slides are all great examples of how to write a subject line and maybe even headlines and topics, sort of writing topics for your content marketing, right? These would transition right into that. And then also there was a question that came in that I thought was pretty interesting. Let's see, Jody asked, how do you get around that denial when cold calling a prospect? How do you keep the individual on the phone? So you want to start asking these pain questions, but what about, you know, sort of just getting that initial engagement?
So I think the denial is common when you ask maybe very simple questions like how's it going, or how do you feel, you know, that's working for you. And then I think that the pain examples are a good thing to implement to work around that. So if they say, oh, it's fine, then you could say, oh, okay, well, a lot of prospects we talk to say that, you know, that part works fine, but then once they start to try to make any changes, that they have to hire a consultant. Is that something you can relate to? And so just throwing examples, throwing examples of common pains that you know that other prospects are experiencing is probably the best way to deal with the denial. And so we'll show you a couple more here. All of these tactics are, maybe, I don't know what time that question came in, but all of these tactics are good for dealing with the denial. Here's another one, just wish list questions. You know, if you could wave a wand and have any functionality added to your current system, what would you add? You know, typically the answer could lead to some sort of pain. You know, they might say, oh, I wish that I had an ability to differentiate these users from these users. Okay, well, why do you have that? You know, what is that? You know, why do you need to be able to see those two different audiences? And you can drill in and get some conversation going. So here are some examples of wish list questions. Help you to get some dialogue going. This is the last of the four tactics, and I would say that this is one that you would use as a last resort. So it's called disqualify, and the concept of disqualifying is a whole. I have an hour-long module on this by itself, but it's basically sort of when at some point you might reach a point where you kind of push the prospect away, and when your prospect is like either on the fence or not really giving you anything that you want that appears good, you know, you can sometimes push them away by saying, well, it sounds like you all are doing pretty good. And this is like the opposite of aggressively selling. So when you aggressively sell, you're trying harder, and the prospect isn't buying, so you start talking about your features more, and you're trying harder. And this is the opposite of that. You're basically kind of doing, it's a takeaway. You're walking away. And so this is relevant. By the way, all of these topics are talked about in my book. There's a chapter on this. I'll talk about my book at the end of this presentation. But if I'm skimming the surface here and you want to know more about this tactic in general, there's a whole chapter of it in my book. But the way to disqualify, to uncover pain, is, let's say that the prospect is in denial and they're denying everything, right? Then you could say, well, it sounds like you all are doing pretty good, and the prospect will either disagree with you, and at which point they'll begin to challenge you, which is to say, well, we're doing pretty good, but we could always have a better this, or they'll confirm it. And if they confirm it, then you kind of close the file and you move on to the next prospect. Like I said, this is a last tactic resort. It's a fairly advanced sales tactic as well. You never want to disqualify someone if they're expressing interest. You only want to disqualify them if they're sort of in a neutral to negative position. And I got to keep moving because we have some more slides and still have to show you. So identify, those are the tactics to use to find pain. Once you do uncover pain and you get the prospect to say, well, this isn't working great, it can be very powerful for you to identify the impact of that pain. Well, the prospect can't run the global report. Well, what does that mean? You can't, if you just leave it there and assume you know what that means, that doesn't take you where you really want to be, because you might assume that the impact is one thing. Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm a doctor and I have a patient who has torn up some stuff. They have knee pain, right? And I know what's causing the knee pain, and to fix the knee pain, they need surgery, okay? And I assume that they want to have the surgery, because if I assume they want to have the surgery, let me back up. If I make an assumption on what they want to do regarding their knee pain, I might make the wrong one. For example, their knee pain might be causing them to not be able to work out and to not be able to spend time with their kids. And these are huge impacts, and they're causing such a negative ripple through their life from a health and happiness standpoint that they would be willing to do the surgery. So the impact there is extremely great, right? And if we didn't ask the patient, well, you have this pain, well, how is this impacting you? Then we wouldn't know what treatment that person would need. But let's look at it from the other side. Let's say we assume that they would want the surgery, but then when we ask the patient, well, you have this pain, it's causing you some problems, how is it impacting you from a day-to-day perspective? They may say, it's no big deal. It hurts a little bit in the morning, but I get loosened up. And then when you realize that the impact is not very much, then you realize that they're not qualified for the surgery. Not that doctors use sales tactics at all, but you can see there that impact is important. The pain by itself is only half the story. How is it impacting your prospects at a technical level, at a business level, at a personal level? When you uncover that, that's where you really begin to get to some powerful information. And the information,
Michael, isn't it also, I guess maybe you're about to dive into this, but you're really hitting a key point there. And one thing I've found is when you get them to start telling you themselves about the impact of it, it's essentially what I call making them hurt, and it starts making them want to fix the problem.
Yeah, that's a great point. And speaking, so kind of in lines with making them hurt, when you identify the impact, you basically magnify the pain or you minimize the pain. When you identify when you magnify it, you make it bigger, right? Which is a good thing. That's going to help you to build your business case. It's going to help you to create leads, do all sorts of great stuff. Create a good lead. But and you could minimize the pain, which might sound like a bad thing, but this is actually a pretty good thing, because you might see pain and you might go, oh, I got a lead here, and you create a lead and you create an opportunity and you put it in your CRM and you got it in your pipeline, but the prospect isn't very responsive to you. And the problem there is that you thought the pain had a lot of impact, but if you really identified the impact and you realized that it wasn't very large, you would have not qualified that prospect and not put them in your pipeline and not told your manager, oh, I got a great deal here, it's going to close. You would be able to manage your pipeline better, manage your forecast, and most importantly, avoid wasting time on a low-quality lead. So minimizing pain is a very good thing to do if that's really where you're at. All right, so I'm going to check in. We got about 10 minutes left, and I'm towards the end, so we're doing okay, but I want to show you Sales Scripter, this tool. So let's bring this all back to that 555 content management lead generation strategy. So how we can use pain to improve emails is that first we need to identify the pain that you resolve, and I have some examples here. So the pain I use a pain that I resolve. A pain that I resolve is when prospects aren't able to generate leads. So then you build content pieces for each pain. So if for the pain of not able to generate leads, I might build a content piece, 3 ways to generate more leads. Just thinking about this right now, I probably have an article with that exact same topic on my website. Then once we have a content piece, we can send an email with, let's say, part of the content or some of the content, and with part of that we can develop a subject line for that email that maybe says, are you struggling to generate leads, or something around not generating leads to get the that should get the prospect's attention for prospects who have the pain of not able to generate leads. And this will help us to grab the prospect's attention versus sending them an email of your latest and greatest new feature. You're going to send them an email that hits their pain. And if you send this email through a CRM or a system that allows you to track opens and clicks, ideally you want to track those opens and clicks. And what the great thing here is that when a prospect clicks, so ideally you're going to put a link in your content piece that goes to maybe, for example, if you write a blog piece on 3 ways to generate more leads, and let's say you put half of that blog or a fourth of the blog in the email, and then you put a link that says read the full blog post here, then they have to click inside that email to get to maybe your website. When a prospect does that, they are self-qualifying themselves for possibly needing what you have to offer. So what we want to do is we want to track those clicks and we move on to the next stage of this program, and we call the clicks first and then call the opens next. And so that's how we're kind of getting back to the subject of email, generating leads with emails. That's how you can use pain.
Yeah, so just a real quick refresher there for those who weren't in the webinar last week. You do exactly what Michael just described, and you start with a list of just names and email addresses. So it may be your existing list that you've built up over the years, a list of attendees from a trade show, a trade industry association type list, or it may be a list that you go to a system like LeadFerret and download. And so you might download hundreds of leads from something like LeadFerret, and using this tactic, your salespeople then focus in on the people that are literally raising their hand and saying, hey, I have this pain. So it really shoots the sales process forward, and it focuses your sales resources on the right prospects.
Yep. So now let's talk about you. And you all have a different product, so we can't give you these are the pains that you should go after. You need to figure out what are the typical pains that you resolve for your ideal prospect. So step 1 is to identify, well, here's a 2-step process to help you to figure out what pains you resolve, because you'll need to do that in order to develop your content pieces. And so one way that we do it here, we actually have built a tool around this called Sales Scripter. But step one is to identify the value that you offer. And then when you identify that, you can look at, well, what are the challenges that resolves? So if we go back to my value, I offer the value if I help, let's say, small business owners. I help small business owners to increase the appointments that they schedule, that they're able to schedule. Okay? And so if I know that that's the value that I offer, then what is the pain that resolves? Well, it's kind of the opposite, right? If I help business owners to schedule more appointments, then I resolve the pain of not able to schedule enough appointments. So it's sort of like a reverse engineering there. Just kind of two steps. That might help you. I'm actually going to show you, we have a tool that can kind of lead you down that path that I just identified. And what I'm going to do, we have about 10 minutes left. And I'm going to show you a little bit of Sales Scripter. And then what we're going to do is I'll show you maybe this for about 5 minutes, then we'll break and we're going to we'll open it up for some questions, and then we will stay after the top of the hour and come back to Sales Scripter if there are any that stay on the phone and want to see more. But this is Sales Scripter, and we talked about it last week, and we'll talk about it throughout these training webinars. But basically, I'm not going to do a full demo on here. It probably takes quite a few minutes, but if you go to this, let me log in real quick. If you go to this Value tab, there's a tool that basically has you fill in the product that you sell, what it does, and it helps you to identify the technical, business, and personal value that you have to offer. And you can do that for one product, or you can do it for 2 or 3. And then when you come over to this Pain tab, then you have questions that kind of lead you to help you to identify what the pains are that you resolve. So you basically will, if you follow this, you'll come up, if you filled it out for 3 products, you'd come out with 3 technical pains, 3 business pains, and 3 personal pains that you resolve. And so let me show you. This tool basically will actually help you to develop your content type pieces. It'll help you develop some topics for your content pieces. I just went here down to this folder. These icons on the left are output that are produced by the questions that you answer in this tool. And so if I click on this marketing output, we get a document that's produced based on all the answers that you filled in. I've already filled this in for a client, but you see here these are content marketing topics that you can, and it provides topics for blog posts, articles, and emails. And so here are a handful that focus on the pain that you resolve. So basically what we've done is we've taken the pain points that you resolve and we've thrown some titles around it. So 4 ways to decrease relying on third-party resources to manage web and mobile needs. So this is filled in. By the way, you can click on this and edit it. But NIP, not able to provide a good mobile experience, in the bud. So anyways, you can come here, fill out Sales Scripter, and you come here and you automatically have a bunch of titles that you can use. There's some other titles that are focused on other areas, not pain. Here are some that are focused on the value that you offer, qualifying question topics.
Yeah.
So we're at 3:55. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off on the demonstration of this tool and throw it back over to you, Craig. Actually, I'm going to.
Well, actually, do you mind, Michael, going into the ideal prospect part of the scripter there?
Oh, yep. So the next, we talked about pain. By the way, this tool, it gives you questions, allows you to, what it basically does is it extracts the most important information about you, your prospects, and your company and products. And so the next tab is Ideal Prospect. And here we help you to extract some demographic details of what your ideal prospect looks like. So the geography, the size, the departments, the title. The great thing about this is that you can take these pieces of information and plug them directly into LeadFerret and leadferret.com, and then immediately have a list of 500, 1,000, 2,000 contacts that you can then do your email blast out to. So
that's exactly what the point I wanted you to get to there, Michael. That's the $1 million feature here, because you go through the scripter and it's going to help you develop these panes, and you can see on the left it's going to develop a whole lot of other outputs, sales scripts, voicemail scripts, etc. But in those panes, of course, can be your topics for creating your content pieces to create that email marketing campaign like we talked about last week. But also, you'll be able to profile your prospect, go over to leadferret.com and start downloading lists of the ideal prospects with their email addresses. So this really ties that, or the way I should say it is, makes the whole program that we went over last week really, really simple to get started with, especially for those of you who are kind of unsure about who should we be targeting and what's the messaging we should be using.
And I want to show you one other thing, email templates. So there's a pre-call email thread here. So this is actually kind of an easy way for you to get to sending multiple emails to your prospect. And this is already filled in. So email number 1, email number 2, and email number 3. And email number 1 focuses on pain. Reason for the emails that we find is very common for organizations like yours to face challenges, and then basically has 3 pain points. So this is automatically filled in by the scripter, so all you have to do is go through this process, answer these questions, and you have all this output. By the way, Sales Scripter is currently available as a beta at no charge, since it's still being fine-tuned. And but let's wrap up, and then we will open it up for questions. And if there are any people that stay on the line, we'll go into Sales Scripter some more. But I've really gone through this information really quickly because we only had an hour. If you want more help, all of this, everything that I've talked to you about here today is in this book, a book that I wrote called The Cold Calling Equation: Problem Solved. It really touches on the topics of pain and whatnot. And even if you're not going to use the phone, the content in this book can be used whether it's email marketing or networking or field sales. I also provide one-on-one sales coaching. Most common package is 4 30-minute sessions for $200. So it's basically $50 a 30-minute session. And most of my clients, we meet once a week over the phone for a month. And I'll extend an offer right now for 5 sessions for $200 for if you email us this week. So you get basically a 5th session for free. We offer sales training programs, both web-based and live programs, based on all this content. I encourage you to go to Sales Scripter. There is a free version that you can go through, and if you need any help, we do offer some walkthrough services where we can go through and answer any questions, help you to wordsmith the answers so you get the best scripts and best email templates. Any questions on any of this or any interest on any of this, just send an email to info@salesscripter.com. That's info@salesscripter.com. Be sure to put 2 S's in the middle of that. Craig, you want to take the next slides and the question session?
Sure. Yeah, so just to remind everybody, in the GoToWebinar control panel there, you'll see where it says questions. Hit the little plus sign there to expand that and type in your questions, and here in just a few minutes we'll dive into those. So a reminder, first of all, next week Michael will also be presenting how to qualify sales leads and focus on sales growth that's profitable. So once we develop or identify a prospect, how do we make sure that they're really likely to make a purchase in the near term before we begin to invest a whole lot of resources from a sales point of view in that particular prospect. And as everybody remembers from last week, or a lot of you remember from last week, those qualifying questions are that second stage in our overall content marketing process. So we'll be diving into that in detail next week. That's January 30th, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern. So be sure and register for that. You can go to salesnexus.com/resources/webinars and register for that now. And you'll also get an email tomorrow that'll have a link to register for that webinar. So the other thing I want to be sure and emphasize is that through the partnership between SalesNexus and LeadFerret.com, you're able to, for free, for 30 days, go to LeadFerret, download 500 contacts of your choosing with email addresses, download those straight into SalesNexus, create emails and campaigns, and send those emails and campaigns out and start generating leads and closing sales, all for free for 30 days. And if things go well and you like what you've accomplished, then you can choose to subscribe to SalesNexus. Every SalesNexus subscriber gets 500 LeadFerret contacts per month. So if you have a sales team of 5 salespeople and you all subscribe to SalesNexus, you're going to get 2,500 contacts from LeadFerret with the email addresses at no additional charge every single month. So when you think about how quickly you could build up a substantial list and put them on these content marketing type campaigns, this really becomes a very low cost but very productive lead generation capability. So go start your free trial today. Again, you're in the email you get tomorrow, there'll be a link to sign up for LeadFerret and a link to start your free trial SalesNexus. And I want to thank again Forrest for his partnership and support of our webinars here today. Thanks, Forrest.
Thank you, Craig. And don't forget that as we're doing, you can also currently use SalesScripter for free as well. So you combine those 3 tools together, all free.
Yep.
That's pretty powerful.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Michael, you want to get back into the scripter?
Well, were there any questions that need addressing?
There's a couple here. Let me go ahead and throw those at you. Let's see. In a conversation with a prospect, how quickly do we move into talking about a solution once you've identified pain?
Well, that's I think that kind of is a personal style probably. I'll use SalesScripter to kind of actually answer that question. In SalesScripter, we produce sales scripts that you can use, and I'll show you how we handle it. You'll see this indirect call script, and there's ideal prospect details, but you'll notice that what we do is at the core, here's sort of an introduction value statement, and at the center of our call, we'll ask some soft qualifying questions, which we'll talk about next week. But then we try to trigger some pain. So here we'll have some common pain points. When we talk with other IT managers, we notice that they have trouble with this. Is that something you can relate to? So, and then what we do after that is then we probably address sort of how we can help right after that, and that's what we do here in the script. So then building interest points, we get into some information about us. So that's kind of the flow that we use is qualifying, pain, and then we build interest. And building interest is what you asked when you said how soon do you talk about how you can help in the solution. So, that might not be a direct answer, but here's maybe a more direct answer is one way that you have 2 options. Okay, you identify pain. You can make a mental note in your head, okay, ding, 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 and you might ask a couple more pain questions, right? You might say, well, do you have any challenges with this? You know, what about that? And then you might ask, what's the impact of that? You know, how is that impacting you at a technical level? Okay, does that impact you in any other ways? So then you've had some discussion around the pain, and then you transition to, okay, well, you know, we actually help businesses to resolve that, and we do it by doing this and that. So,
yeah, and Michael, if I can interject there, you know, it's going to vary, as you've pointed out, from business to business. It varies a lot based on your sales process. What are the events in the sales process? I mean, is there going to be a proposal or a demo or some sort of, you know, discovery type meetings and discussions, those kind of things? And if so, a lot of this has to be geared towards just moving to those next steps. But in a business-to-business setting, especially in a complex sale where there's more than one person involved in making the decision, you know, back to the answer that the question that Mike asked about when to move on to suggesting a solution. I think you want to make sure that you've sufficiently reminded them of the pain and made them feel it and quantify it, right? If you haven't gotten to the point where you're talking about things like, oh, wow, that sounds really like it could be very harmful to your business, what do you think that costs you? If you haven't started getting them to talk about the numbers involved, then it's going to be difficult for them to go back to their committee and recommend that they invest whatever thousands of dollars with you to solve that pain, right? So you have to help them make that connection. So I would not stop talking about them until you've figured that out. And then, you know, once they've told you, well, it probably costs us $20,000 a month, then you can say, well, if I had a solution that would cost you $5,000 once and would save you that $25,000 or $20,000 a month, would that be something you'd want to hear about, right? Let's see. James is asking a good one that will kind of throw you a curveball, Michael. When is the pain not part of the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think that if you're focusing on, I think that it's more common for us to skip over pain. So if you're focusing on pain too much, then that's a good problem to have. But, you know, I would say as much of the conversation that you can have when it's talking about the prospect's pain, how it's impacting them, and then even when you get into your solution, you're still connecting it to the pain, right? You're still talking about how you can help, but talking about the pain that resolves and the benefits that come with that. So, you know, if I would talk about it as much as you can.
It's really key from a post-sale point of view too. If you're able to identify the pain up front before the sale, and then, you know, document that somehow in your CRM or wherever, then after the fact, once they've taken delivery of your product or are experiencing your service, then you can go back and ask them, you know, remember we talked about this problem. Is it getting better? You know, that's really powerful. If obviously you want to know if it's not working for them so you can adjust. You want to know that early. But it also usually leads to additional opportunities, you know. So now you're establishing trust. You know, I listened to you before, and I remember why we did this, and now I'm checking with you to make sure we've accomplished your goal. And, man, that establishes some trust that sets the table for all sorts of additional opportunities. That's really most of the questions, Michael, so you want to dive into the script here a little more?
Sure. So I kind of rushed through it earlier. We're just trying to get through so much information earlier, but for those that are hanging around, and you might not have attended last week, so I'll just take a small step back. SalesScripter this is a web-based tool that will help you to build out a number of different sales messaging and sales strategy pieces for you or for your business. But what it does is it basically takes you through these stages of questions. For each stage, there's about anywhere between 5 to 15 questions. Some of the questions will make you think, and unfortunately, those are like at the beginning. And it gets fairly easy as you get through, meaning they're questions that you can answer fairly easily, but some of the ones early on are fairly thought-provoking and might make you think. But when you go through this, you're going to basically be guided to enter information about your products and what you sell, and all of these answers are plugged into a library of output. But what we do is we help you to identify the value that you offer, and based on that, we'll help you to identify the pain that you resolve. And based on the pain that you resolve, we help you to focus on the ideal prospect that you should be talking to. So some demographic details, but the power in this really comes in that we bring over the pain that you resolve and help you to try to figure out what's going on on the prospect side for the people that you should try to talk to. We help you to develop some qualifying questions for the details of your ideal. Basically the ideal prospect helps you to build like a character sketch. If you were a detective and you were looking for a suspect, you get the cartoon drawing with the mustache and the hat and the glasses and the long hair, and then the qualifying allows you to figure out what questions you need to ask to make sure you're talking to the right people, and so on. So there's a few other stages, but once you do all that, you can there's a document filled in that provides elevator pitch value statements, and these are all produced from the answers that you provide. Not to say that all of these are you would memorize all of these, but it's a great tool that you can scroll through and pick 2 or 3, maybe give these to your salespeople if you're a manager, and let me show you some stuff that might really get you excited. I showed you the sales scripts. We produced a few scripts. We at my company we use an indirect call method, meaning we call people and try to have conversations. So this is a script that's very question-based. It's really around qualifying questions, and then we go for the close later in the call. But this gives you a whole script, some name drops, closing language. But there's another script that kind of goes for the close fairly early on, and this library will continue to grow of templates. But there's also a first meeting script. You might be more of a field sales or face-to-face salesperson. Here's a first meeting script, qualifying questions, still pain points come in, building interest points, some hard qualifying questions. Let me go back and show you these email templates. So the 555 content marketing piece, the real power in that is developing some real decent content, blog posts or email pieces that have some content written about the pains that you resolve. But this tool produces email threads that you can use without having someone spend some time writing anything. Here is email number 1 produced automatically by the answers that are provided. If you use, we use Sales Nexus at my business, and so for each client, we do appointment setting for other businesses, and for each client, we'll go through the sales scripter, and right when we're done, we'll print this. We'll take this first email, and then there's email number 2. Email number 2 is designed to be more around the value that you offer. And then email number 3 kind of has some more information about you and your solution. But what we do is we take these 3 emails, we load up a campaign in Sales Nexus, and then we pull a list of 1,000 prospects from LeadFerret, and then we click send, and we immediately send out 1,000 of these first emails to our prospects. And then what we do is we wait a couple days, and then we just start calling the clicks and opens, and start scheduling appointments. And then if we don't get a hold of anybody, 2 weeks later, they get the second email. And then we start calling the opens and clicks from that. And then if we still don't get a hold of anybody, 2 weeks later, they get this third email. So that's really helped us to build, to schedule appointments at a higher level. But those are sort of pre-call emails. We also have email threads for once you've talked to someone. So these are good if they say, oh, send me your information. Oh, okay. You know, we try to get around that, but sometimes you can't get around it. And so here's an email. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me, as I mentioned. And so here's 3 emails. So when we talk to someone, they say, send me your information, we send out, they're going to get 3 emails from us over a 4-week period, and then we typically call them again in between emails 2 and 3. So that's pretty cool. And then we have a similar email thread for when we leave a voicemail. So for those people that never answer their phone, we'll leave them, after 5 to 10 attempts, we'll leave a voicemail message, and then we'll send one of these post-voicemail email threads. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is really a whole selling system. Michael, can you go into one of the input pages and show us how the help tips?
Sure, yep. So for each question, there is a little question mark off to the side. If you click on that, a little box comes up, and it basically explains the question that you're being asked. We give you a couple example questions. So, a couple example answers, and then we give you some additional resources that might be able to help. And there's one of those for just about. Well, there's a help button for every question that you might need help with. Some of the questions are fairly easy. The tool also provides a lot of you all might meet with clients, and you probably have to give some you might have to give some sort of presentation. This provides a first draft of a presentation that you can give just based on your answers. So here are the challenge. It's not in a PowerPoint format. You would have to kind of take this as a heading and copy this and put it as these as bullets on a slide. But it gives you, it's divided by lines in terms of, this would be slide 1 of a. It basically provides a overview presentation that you can give, how we help, our products, how we differ, company overview, case study 1, case study 2, case study 3. It's probably not going to be something you can take from here and walk into a client meeting, but it's for sure probably better than starting with a blank PowerPoint slide deck, or it might give you some ideas of how to improve your existing sales presentation. And I'll just go back to this marketing output because we were just kind of flying through that earlier. Again, content marketing topics. So these are titles of articles, or these could be titles of emails or blog posts, and these are, we basically wrote, we put 3 impacts from, and then we insert the business a pain. 3 impacts from having high marketing costs, not able to communicate effectively. So you might need to improve. It was written to answer a question, and you might need to update it. So if I update that to make that, then let's see, 3 impacts from having high marketing costs and not able to communicate effectively. So anyways, so there's a whole, you could use this as like an editorial calendar for your blog if you have a blog for your business. Do you feel like the right tools and systems are in place to support the business demands? There's an article right there.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Here's one last thing that I haven't shown you. Objections map. So we're pretty big on you should be prepared for the objections that you're going to run into. And so here's an objections map which takes some of the most common objections that you might face, and what we do is we redirect to, especially when you're cold calling, when someone says, I'm not interested, we don't try to make them interested. We redirect. So we might say, oh, I understand. Someone says, I'm not interested, and we'll go, oh, okay, I understand. Hey, and this is optional, this part. And I want you to know I'm not even trying to sell you anything at this point, as I don't even really know if what we have is a good fit for you. That's why I just had a couple questions. If you had a couple minutes, hey, if I could ask you real quick, how do you feel about your organization's ability to manage and make changes to your website? So there's one of my soft qualifying questions. And if they answer that, if they go, what, if they answer that, then what we've done is we've redirected them away from their objection that they are not interested. So basically this objections map gives you a lot of the standard objections that you're going to run into, and it gives you redirects from the questions that you answered.
This is really a powerful sales management tool, sales training tool.
Sure. From a sales management standpoint, one thing it really helps with is governance, because a sales manager might hire 5 salespeople, put them through training, and then put them out in the field or on the phone, and they just hope that that person says the right things and that they got the most out of training, and they hope that the gap between that they learn quickly through experience. Well, this takes away that gap of trying to learn through experience, and it gives you what you need to know so that you can hit the ground running instead of crawl, walk, run. Because during the crawl, walk, run, people end up getting fired because they're not selling anything, and then the company has to go and hire someone new and have an opening while that person's being hired and trained, and then pay to have that person trained, and turnover costs, training costs, and lost business in the meantime.
Yep.
Yeah, Michael, and I give our sales manager, he's been using it, and he said that it's really, he sees it almost more as a tool for him, because it allows him to sort of encapsulate everything that he needs to train his sales reps on, and therefore saving a lot of his time. So he sees it really as a way for him to save on the training time, therefore saving his own time, not just increasing the ramp-up time for his sales reps.
Yeah, good point.
That's good. Craig, any other questions?
No, there's still a lot of people here with us, so I really appreciate everybody hanging on. Obviously, the Sales Scripter is something that a lot of people are interested in, so let's just remind everybody, just go to salesscripter.com, and you can create a free account here, while the system's in beta, and you go through the process, enter the information like Michael's talked about, and get all of this output. You'll also go ahead.
Here's one that I accidentally skipped over: voicemail scripts. I know that, for me personally, when I was doing a lot of outbound calling, I didn't really know what to say when I was leaving a voicemail. Here are some scripts to give you some thoughts. We provide you with 4 messages: a value message, a pain message, a building interest message, and a product-centric message. And basically, it's pulled directly from the questions that you answer. And so that can help as well. Just sorry about that.
No, it's all right. This is good. So, to kind of wrap it up here, there's 3 things that we really want you to do. Well, really 4. One of them is go get registered for next week's webinar when Michael's going to talk about qualifying prospects, developing your qualifying questions, and questioning techniques. And then also go to SalesScripter and get signed up for your free account. Go to leadferret.com and get signed up for your free account. And go to salesnexus.com and sign up for your free 30-day trial. And you'll be able to go through this entire process that we've been talking about at no charge, including accessing a list of 500 contacts that you want to reach out to, and really put the whole concept to the test. So with that, again, thanks, Forrest, for joining us.
Thank you, Craig.
And Michael, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really good. As Michael has said, he really just kind of scraped on the surface of this topic of pain. So if you really want to learn more about that, I highly recommend his book, The Cold Calling Equation, much more in-depth, sort of in treatment of each of these subjects. So take a look at that. But again, thanks a lot, Michael. It's really great.
My pleasure.
And we'll be back next week on the 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern to focus on qualifying questions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.